Need to? All right. Welcome to our eighth class of the semester after our break. Today, I'm going to be strictly handheld microphone, so I'll try to keep it down here, not get too close. Otherwise, it gets all distorted. So nice to see Ethan here, Zach's here, and we have three online. And for those who are watching the recording later, for the moment, you must be aware that the three synchronous online students, the ones in the cosmos right now, and that would be Yasmin, Brooklyn, and Sarah, we will not be able to hear them here when they speak. So they're going to be answering through the live chat, but they can hear us. And then tech support hopefully will get here soon and can correct this so that we can hear the cosmos. But the cosmos, in reality, the real cosmos tends to be a pretty quiet place um, without us humans there yet. But we hope to become multiplanetary eventually, which means we humans will go into the cosmos and make a lot of noise. Anyways, so good to see all of you, and we'll be able to work around some of the tech issues today, but we're going to continue with our journey that we have been on for the last 7 weeks or so before there was a break. And today, what I'd like to do in this first class of the second half of the semester is actually spend some time just looking at examples of really well done second reflections. There were a lot of good reflections, and students are taking the assignment seriously, which is great. And I want to be able to identify what's working well and also be able to work with you so that you are prepared for the third reflection and then your fourth one, which is going to be the big assignment of the semester. So there's a lot coming in the second half of the semester in terms of deeper reflecting, particularly in your final assignment. And I want to make sure you're ready for that. In officially, we are entering into now the what I might call the off the planet portion of the semester, which is that we're going to start exploring space and new worlds and the universe and the solar system and the human quest for intelligent life elsewhere in the cosmos. Essentially, we're going to take a big, broad view of what are humans doing in space. And then we're going to try and answer the question, are we humans really ready for the kind of exploration that has begun? And yeah, oh, good. Come on in. It's area. Yeah, here come good because I wanted to talk. I need to get a book that I want to show you. Sorry, I just was troubleshooting too much and I didn't have a chance to get everything set up. Go, oh, we've already started, so go grab a seat. I'm just on a handheld microphone today. I just want to um, show you a book that I've been reading and I'm going to continue to read, which is terrific. I mentioned this early on in the semester. It's called A City on Mars. And it's just recently published by a husband and wife team of scientists and scholars. And Kelly and Zach Weinersmith have written a very well received book that looks at the idea of should we and can we really create space settlements? Are humans really ready to start living elsewhere in the solar system, on another planet, for example, or the moon? Can we settle space? Should we settle space? And have we really thought this through? So essentially, what I'm going to be doing in the second half of the semester is I'm going to be looking at this idea of new worlds, the idea of space exploration, and also try and apply a sense of reality to it as well. So it's not just about all the amazing things that humans are doing right now in space exploration, but also try and ask the question of Like what really has a chance of succeeding? Are humans really ready to be going into space and thinking about building a colony, for example, on Mars? Or is this just marketing? Is this just something from Elon Musk's heated imagination that isn't really going to lead to anything that is going to help humanity at this point? So we're gonna ask some big questions about space, but we also need to understand what space is. We need to understand what the cosmos is, for example, the planets and what they contain. What, for example, do we mean when we talk about interstellar space travel, for example? What do we mean when we talk about exoplanets, which is a big area of research right now? Exoplanets are planets that are out of our solar system, extra solar system planets. In other words, they're outside of our solar system, but they're in our galaxy. And we think that those exoplanets may have some form of life on them or the ingredients of life. In other words, they're very close to being composed like planet Earth is. And there's a lot of research being done on what might we do if we can land on some of these planets. What could we start building there? So space exploration is a really big part of the second half of the semester. And then we're building towards this idea of the human brain and legacy, final two classes. So after we really take this big view of where are we going in the cosmos and really opening up the human future to what's happening in space, we're going to come back in the final two classes and look at the idea of, in terms of humanity's destiny, in terms of the human future, yes, science and technology are taking us places we never imagined. And yes, there are all sorts of forces that we have to be thinking about in terms of freedom and sustainability and the next big thing. But the truth is that the future is all about the human brain, because everything that gets invented and discovered and created comes from the human brain. That's the center of so much that is happening now on planet Earth and that will happen in the future. So neuroscience and learning more about what we are understanding about the capacity of the human brain, how we're learning more about memory and consciousness, and how much more will we be discovering about the human brain that could lead to us thinking differently about the way we live and the way we build our future. It's a really important area of research today. And for you to understand what the human brain is and what it's capable of and what we think it might be capable of, the more we begin to learn about it through science, will tell us something about our future too. So the human brain, and then finally legacy, when we will come back at the end and you will think about what exactly do you want to do in your life? What kind of impact do you want to have while you're alive? What is your future? So space, the human brain, neuroscience, and legacy, all of these things are going to play a big role in the second half of the semester. Before I check in with all of you and see how you're doing, let me just see what's happening online. I see, Brooklyn, you've asked, when is the third reflection due? Good question. And the third reflection, I can't tell you exactly, Brooklyn, but we're looking at probably in 3 weeks. Okay, so you can just make a rough note of that right now. I have to get that done. I will confirm that and have that posted soon. Okay, Brooklyn, but I'm going to write down for now 3 weeks for reflection 3. Okay, so great, thanks. Brooklyn's got that. And let's see if there's anything else in the cosmos from Yasmin or Sarah. No, we're good. So for the two of you, Sarah and Yasmin, just park anything you have to say like Brooklyn in the live chat and we'll take it up. the speakers we're having trouble with right now. Okay, so I've called tech support. Okay, so is there anything you would like to, Zach, Aria, Ethan, and how do you spell it again? Well, oh, Yash. Yeah, Yash. Good. Do you want to come? Could you come sit here so we can see you? And yeah, great. That way they can see you. So we've got Yash here, Aria, Ethan, and Zach. Let's begin officially by reviewing. And then what I'd like to do is spend some time with 4 reflections that I've put up on the big board. Interesting and well-written second reflections, because I'd like to look at the kind of good quality that is being done in this class. And then we'll touch on a little bit of space exploration today. I'm not going to be able to go into much detail today with New Worlds in Space. I'm going to wait until next week. But let's start with the review. I remember 2 weeks ago when we were looking at the 2 big forces, which are exactly. And somebody was reading was it a 60-volume anime? Exactly. So why don't you take the microphone for a second, and we're going to review for a moment, because we had this, I thought, a lovely moment with Aria when we were coming to the end of the class, and she said she had been thinking of that very thing that we were talking about the previous night or something like that. So can you remind us of what you were telling us about the anime that you had been reading, right? You've been watching. Okay. Is anime only something can't you read it too, or is that graphic novel or something? Okay. 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 So what I just wanted to remind you of, what I think was really great about that, is the kind of creativity that I think I'm getting a sense Aria sort of represents, but we all have it in us. There's 2 very critical qualities about the human being that are going to play such a role in our future, and that's our creative intelligence and our critical thinking. These are powerful qualities. But it's often said that creativity comes first. So this kind of sort of engagement with a lot of creativity, I think, is something that I would like to draw on more as we move forwards in the second half of the semester. So tell me a bit more about what this anime was about exactly.
So in the world of Full Metal Alchemist, there's
Full
Full Metal Alchemist. Yeah, it's
Full Metal
Full Metal Alchemist. There's
Alchemy?
Alchemist.
Alchemist. Full Metal Alchemist.
There's 2 versions of the anime. The first one's called that,
Yeah.
but the readaptation, the remake, is called Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. So the first one kind of, it started with the manga, but since the manga was fairly new at the time, it kind of drifted away from the storyline.
Yeah.
So they made a remake that followed it.
Hold your thought, okay? This is great because we're going to fix this. Thanks. I can't hear the online group. So watch. I've got Elgin here, everybody in the Cosmos. We're going to get, and we're having some trouble hearing. So first, okay, Yasmin, could you jump on your microphone and just speak for 10 seconds? Just start.
Hello, hello, hello.
It's because you just walked in. So now we can hear it for. Don't go. Wait a minute, Yasmin. Brooklyn, could you jump on your microphone and speak for 10 seconds? Go ahead.
Hello.
Well, now it's working. I have no. Thank you, Elgin. That's tech support for you. He just shows up and it's working. So there you go. Okay, so before I rudely interrupted Aria, Could you please enlighten us a little bit more about Full Metal Alchemist? Go ahead.
So in the world of Full Metal Alchemist, there's I think it's called a Mistress, which is the military nation where it's set. And Edward and Alphonse, they're state alchemists, which are technically like a subdivision of the military
Ooh.
who uses alchemy powers to like enforce laws and stuff. And
Mm.
basically alchemy is like magic, but science. So they take
So, yeah.
they take whatever is on the earth,
Mhm.
transmute it into other things
Yeah.
using like the ores or the chemicals in the
It's
substance.
what we humans do. We
Yeah.
take stuff and we make new things.
And
Yeah.
when Edward and Alphonse were, I think they were 8 at the time, their mom died. So they went into their father's study, they learned all the alchemy, and then they tried to bring their mom back to life
Oh,
using something called human transmutation. But in the show, there's a law that specifically says you cannot do that.
the
Yeah,
law.
the law.
The law of the society is saying you can't go that far.
Yeah.
It's not allowed.
Well, like what's interesting is the reason behind that law isn't because of that.
Keep going.
So obviously, the human transportation it backfires on them, and Alphonse completely loses his body, and only his soul is left. And Edward ends up losing, I think it was his left leg
Uh-huh.
from up here. And to bring his brother back, just his soul, he goes to a suit of armor. He does another human transmutation, and he binds his brother's soul to the suit of armor, which ends up making him lose his right arm. Yeah. And the thing that came in the circle that they transmutated was like an abomination. It wasn't their mom. And it traumatized them, so they gave up. And then eventually a character called Roy Mustang, he comes and he recruits them into the military at the age of 12.
At the age of 12.
Yes. So the story starts like when they're 15, where like really starts when
Yes.
they're in the state alchemy like set. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff. They keep meeting different alchemists who have different views. Like the first villain of the show was this guy named Scar, whose entire nation was like murdered by a mistress.
Scar.
Scar.
He's just a walking scar.
He like
He's the
he,
walking.
he gets rid of his name
yeah,
because
scar.
of like how is hard to explain.
Yeah.
His nation called Ishvala were based. I fully believe it's based off India or something.
Okay.
But his culture, he got rid of his name because alchemy killed his culture, like genocide. So now he's using alchemy to murder the state alchemists who were responsible for
Wow.
the Ishvalan War.
But here's the question, Ariel. What kind of society are they trying to create as opposed to destroy? Like, what do they want to see for humanity that is good? What would they like to see?
So that's a really big spoiler. And this
Oh,
guy
okay,
here, he
okay.
says he wants to watch a show. But
No spoiling. No spoiling.
technically, in short, the military heads that the Führer, that's the guy's name.
The Führer.
Yeah, it's
Oh
based off.
no!
I'm sorry.
That's to bring in the Führer.
That's the name. Führer Bradley.
Adolf Hitler. That's the Führer.
That's
Yeah, Adolf Hitler. You know the name Adolf Hitler, right? Okay. Well, listen, people from he is probably considered the cruelest, worst, ugliest, most destructive dictator in history. But there are many others too. But he was Germany's dictator through the Second World War, and he killed a lot of people deliberately. But we won't get into that. Okay, it's called the Holocaust. But anyways, go ahead. Yes.
so Führer Bradley, in short, he wants to use his military power to get rid of the other smaller colonies and make his country bigger and stronger.
Oh,
Right? Technically, like what most countries did like centuries ago, make their empire bigger,
mhm.
military might. Obviously, there's more to it, but I still don't want to spoil it too
Okay,
much.
don't spoil it for Ethan. Okay.
No spoilers for Ethan.
Yeah, no. Thank you, Aria. It's great that you brought this up. Okay, and it's really important that we talk about um, these kinds of great works of creativity and art because they're speaking to something in the human being that's really important. There are things that humans want, humans are thinking about, and this will play a role in our future. So I think it's fair to say that what you've described, Area, is quite a unnerving exploration of the power of science. The power of science. Alchemy is science. And I wondered if there's anything Yasmin would like to add, or Brooklyn, or Sarah, about in what Area has just talked about, the work of imagination, human imagination. Where is religion in this story? Is it anywhere? What do you think? You want to try it, Yasmin, Brooklyn? Yeah, and or Sarah, before we come back here. Where is religion? We're just reviewing. We're just reviewing from last 2 weeks before. We were looking at science and religion before we jump into our new topic today. Yasmin, go ahead.
Um, well, from my knowledge, I know religions do have an aspect of magic. It's something that's always been prevalent, especially in religions, and also in Satanism with black magic and Wicca stuff. And I know there's a lot of like scrolls or ancient rituals that do carry a lot of power in them. And I think they're held in the Vatican, if
Mhm.
I'm not mistaken. So they have a lot of mystery and darkness to them. But if it's given into the wrong hands, again, it can be abused, similar to like in Full Metal Alchemist, how the guy wants to conquer and rule everyone
Yes.
in his empire and around. So-
I'm glad you mentioned this idea of conquer and rule, because something that we're going to be exploring a lot in the second half of the semester is, with humans going increasingly into space, come on in, and with people now talking about a first long-term human settlement on the moon. Now we're talking about that. Mars, and those are the two parts of the solar system that could be inhabited by humans. Certainly not anything closer to the sun like Mercury and Venus, because they're just too hot. But they're rocky, and we could, in theory, be there, but we would have a very great deal of difficulty going and creating a settlement on Jupiter or Saturn or any of the planets that are essentially gas, because there's nothing there really for us to be um, uh, living on in terms of land. So we're looking at these four rocks, if you will, in the solar system, closest to the sun: Mercury or Venus, Earth, and Mars, and then the moon around Earth. And then, of course, we talk largely now about Earth Mars and the moon. The question we're going to be asking through the semester, I'm just putting it out there right now, is what kind of society would humans be creating? What kind of rules would they be adhering to? How will they be living together in these new worlds? Will we simply be taking old conflicts and old problems from Earth and living them out in a new way, but still with the same conflicts elsewhere? And this is what Kelly and Zach Weinersmith have explored in A City on Mars, is they think, and we're going to look at this more, they think humans are not ready to be living elsewhere because they haven't resolved the fundamental conflicts here on Earth. And as a result, if we haven't put our own house in order down here, we're going to simply be taking the same problems, and perhaps with graver consequences, in another part of the solar system. So this is really important when we talk about conquer and rule, and this idea that it would be a military style government at the end, although I don't want to speculate. I don't want to try and spoil anything for Ethan. But it sounds to me like in this anime, the end of this is going to be something kind of authoritarian and militaristic. And I'm not so sure that's a good thing for humanity, but maybe I'm wrong. And again, I don't want to, I'm asking the question. I don't want to spoil it. So don't answer it, okay? Don't answer it. But that's what you're going to be thinking about a lot in the second half of the semester is we are going into space. We are starting to think of settling other parts of at least the solar system. So are we ready to do that psychologically and socially? We may be technically, from an engineering standpoint, we can do it. Although I'm not even sure at this point, I can say that 100% because the Odyssey lander that was put on the moon last week by the US fell on its side. And that mission appears to be a bit of a failure. Nobody's talking about it this week. And it's kind of remarkable that how many decades after we landed people on the moon in the 1960s, here we are in 2024, and we can't even land a lander on the moon and it falls on its side. So I think that technically, maybe we have also some questions to ask right now. But the bigger questions really are, is humanity really ready? Are we grown up enough and ready to be going elsewhere and living there? Okay, Aria?
I know I just brought up Full Metal Alchemist, but there's another anime that I was recommended by my high school teacher a few years ago.
Yes.
Called Mobile Suit Gundam Iron Blooded Orphans. And ironically, it's a colony set in Mars,
Yes.
like several years after it's already been started. And I can say for a fact that a lot of the problems from Earth just migrated into Mars. Like, and I'm not talking about financial issues. I'm talking about like really bad, dark issues, like
Sure.
people taking advantage of children,
Yeah.
making them work,
Slavery,
poverty, all that.
cruelty,
Slavery.
child exploitation. I mean,
Exactly.
we would call that depravity, human depravity, the lowest low, which is the way we cruelly abuse children. I mean, you can't, get worse than that in terms of the destruction of innocence and cruelty. It's horrendous, of course.
Basically, the characters, it's a whole group of them, again, stuck in a military organization. They try and rebel, and then they try to get off Earth, like Mars, and go back to Earth, where they're not suffering, they're not orphans, they're not fighting for their lives every day. Because a lot of the children do end up dying. I don't even have to spoil everyone.
So, but it sounds to me like in the end, the theme is that Earth is a better place. So you come back to Earth and you start to maybe have a deeper appreciation of what we have because it was worse out there in what we created.
It's mainly because the people that made the colony on Mars, they made it for themselves, not for the people that were living there. So it was really neglected a lot. And there's a situation in the anime where Mars tries to get its independence, like several other colonies in history have done to their mother nations.
Yes.
So I kind of have a feeling that if we did have a colony on Mars or the moon or somewhere, that same kind of like rebellion would happen.
Yeah.
Where they try to get independence away from their mother nation.
I'm really glad that you're not only reading or watching these things, but you in the way that you express it. Clearly, you're enjoying the storylines. There are important storylines in these kinds of graphic novels, comic books, and also the anime, for example. I'm not familiar with it, but again, we're coming back to this idea of exactly what are we supposed to be doing in space, we humans. Okay, that's going to be there in the semester. Let's go to Ethan, and then we're going to move on and make sure I get time to really deal with the main part of today's class. But Ethan, I hope nothing's been spoiled for you. Go ahead. Yeah.
When it's coming to the talkings about going to like different planets and stuff, and if
Yes.
we're moving like civilizations and stuff.
Yep.
I think there's a huge factor we need to take in consideration, which is like, what are we doing here that's making us want to go to space? And there's a lot of like concerns where there's lots of wars going on.
Yes.
Too many wants and needs that these other countries are kind of forcing themselves into. Like USA would always go try and attack other countries. That's a thing that's going on the news a lot, and I think there's a big thing where we're not really ready. If we're not really ready to share the Earth that we have now, which is probably a driving factor to us wanting to go to space, and
Yes.
we don't know what could happen with the competition aspect of it because the United States and Russia were trying to race for the moon landing.
Yes.
What could happen if one tries sabotaging another and it's another ruined thing?
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of other things that are actually happening in space already. A lot of debris from all the other failed
Exactly. Garbage.
garbage.
And it could be creating long-term toxic damage to the atmosphere or beyond,
It's hard to see
for
it,
sure.
but there's like a huge orbiting amount of just
Debris.
and
Yeah,
stuff,
human
and
debris.
it's a factor that the new rockets that are being sent to space have to take in like consideration when they're going up. And so the fact that if we keep failing, we're either going to close our window more, and so we got to be really careful with it, or at some point we're probably just going to sabotage it just for ourselves in general. And
Yeah.
it's kind of sad.
It's well put, Ethan, and I think that we need to remind ourselves through this second half of the semester as we start to go off the planet increasingly, looking more at space exploration. We need to try and bring the sense of reality here, which is exactly what is our purpose and what sorts of new problems might we create for ourselves that could be even worse. Let's move on, okay? Because I want to make sure I can deal with the main part of today's class. And I will just go over here for a second and see in the live chat to make sure. Yeah, Yasmin has put in that something like 4,000 tons of debris or human garbage are in space. I don't know if that's accurate. I'm not going to ask Yasmin to really defend the source at this point, just to say that we know that there is a problem. I just don't know in terms of the tonnage, Yasmin, or what the debris actually is. But it's okay. We're not going to spend too much time on the sources right now. But it's consistent with what humans do all the time, which is that we create waste wherever we are. And we have to learn how to create less. That's a problem. Let's see what else. Sarah, Sarah, can you just read out loud what that is? Are you able to jump on your microphone? I think it's because we are greedy and want to take over everything. Okay. Okay, your microphone? Yeah. Okay, thanks, Yasmin. That's from NASA? Good. So, okay. So that's a little bit of review just to kind of get us back into the idea that in the last class of the second half semester, we were looking at those two fundamental forces, science and religion, and how important they are in the human future. And throughout the first half of the semester, I was looking at some of those other forces as well, too. We didn't spend a lot of time on conflict and war, but we tried to with Together on Earth in that class as well, and how that may play out in the future. I want to just spend some time now really talking about more your future individually in this course for the semester. And I want to do that by really looking at the work that you're doing in your reflecting, because the most important part of this course ultimately is your grade. I know that. And I always put a lot of emphasis on your ability to think deeply about what's happening in these classes. I'm kind of excited to say that in all of the assignments that I'm seeing this semester, in all of my classes in this classroom, which is about, I have 3 courses, Global Leader, Short History of the World, Humanity's Destiny. I have about 200 students. I've seen in the first half of the semester, probably 3 students only that I'd had to deal with directly around AI and serious cheating. and that's okay. I mean, I can deal with that, but I'm seeing it go down, seeing it go down, and I think it might have something to do with the recordings being available, and students can go back and watch the recordings and check the content, and maybe the recordings are making the classes a little more interesting for students, and so they're more engaged, and they care more about this. But students are saying as well, watching the recordings, that they like hearing from the other students. And they're learning from you, which is intended. That's what I like to do with the recordings and this format, is make sure that that all the students can be interacting with each other. So that's why I want to spend a little bit more time on your voices and your reflections today. And then next week, we'll really start to look more deeply at space exploration, and perhaps area you could bring at least one example, a link of an episode that you think we could, or a scene from an episode, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, that we could put up here from one of the animes that you think would be really interesting for us to watch? Either one, the ones, or something that maybe is new that you watch between now and next week, but we can watch it next week. Okay. Is there anything, for example, around space exploration, space settlement, and extraterrestrial, extra intelligent life that humans discover? This would be cool. Okay, so just we can do that next week. Okay, but just think about what might be a good link for that. So is there any, before I go into the reflections that I've selected, is there anything online in the cosmos that you would like to address at this point? Please feel free. If there's anything that you wanted to talk about immediately today, anything that you'd like to address? You good? Yeah. Ethan, please go ahead.
Going off of another kind of anime that came around, it was based off of a game, and it's based of a futuristic. It's called Cyberpunk 2077.
Cyberpunk 2027?
2077.
27. Oh, okay.
So it'd only probably be 50 years later
Yeah.
from today, and it's based in a futuristic dystopian world, and it's based around in a city that's kind of a scary but almost realistic reflection of what could possibly be like kind of a futuristic aspect of what we're living in
Right,
now.
in this century.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
One of the things is it's like very individualist. There's not quite a lot of
Humanity.
not a lot of humanity in this city, and it's based off around a lot of gangs and a lot of separations between these kinds of people.
Yeah.
There's gangs, then there's like higher up or corporate kind of people,
Yeah.
and there was
White collar gangs, we might
Yeah.
say. Okay.
and so the big separation and division between the different styles of life and what makes them, but lots of violence and lots of non-cooperation just for who you are.
Wow.
And there's actually a thing that they do that's an attraction, which is going to the moon. And so it's not, so going to the moon isn't like for exploration, it's just a attraction. And it
Ah.
just seems like another kind of consumption, or another kind
Yeah.
of consumer
Yeah.
thing that humans have done. And that's a big trend that I see with just humanity in general.
Can I ask you to go over to the board and put a few of these things down? Because there's some, keep your microphone with you, okay? As you go, because I'd like you to write down, take the pen on the side, and we're going to make sure, I don't think, Ethan, you've done notes before, right? Did you do it the first? Okay, then put Ethan, this is the Ethan sequel, okay? Ethan sequel notes, okay? Ethan sequel notes, this is great. And would you write down the Cyberpunk 2077 and anything else in terms of interesting things from popular culture, whether it's anime, or it could be music, or it could be movies that have a dimension around space exploration that's important that you think, and we'll look at these things. Pop culture is very important when it comes to space exploration. That's great. So write as much as you can, and also put that in the live chat, and we will come back area to that. In fact, you know what you can do is when you're ready, just walk over to the board and give it to Ethan to write on the board, okay? And we'll deal with that next class. Okay, so I want to read out loud something that a student wrote, and I've removed the names of the students, or at least I've put them so that you can't see them as I read out loud these second reflections. Nothing of here that I'm about to read is an example of something that was badly done. I wouldn't do that to the student, even anonymously. Okay, so you may, among the students online right now or here, recognize yourself here as having been the author. If you want to take credit for it, you can. It's up to you, okay? But the more important thing is the content of what's here. Well, I don't think it can be much of a surprise that quite a few of you took on Neuralink and Elon Musk and the idea of this new implant in the human brain. And this reflection is great because the student understood that the best way to reflect is to pick one topic and go into depth about it. I know some students were writing about what was interesting in every single of those 3 classes that I asked you. That was fine. But the best is when you pick one thing and you can go deep with that one thing, okay, or deeper. So here's what the student wrote. And just listen for a second, and we'll talk about this a little bit. After discussing in class the new technology launch named Neuralink, which is also the name of the company formed by Elon Musk, I was left eager to learn more about it. Above all, to make a more accurate judgment on the product. Because the information provided at the time wasn't enough. Because I prefer obtaining essential facts firsthand that would lead to establish my own conclusion. Going through several sites makes me have a less than positive perspective about Neuralink and the chip, as most of the news were centered on Elon Musk. Focusing on him and what he was saying was more crucial than the chip information. The majority places too much emphasis on him, although he is the founder and a well-known figure. What matters most is the chip and the people who work with it and understand the way it operates. This appears to be marketing for Elon Musk to attract more people to watch him, and the chip being only as the background with the information repeated over and over again. I'm going to stop for a second, okay? This is so interesting. First of all, to the student who wrote this, if you're here or you're there in the Cosmos or you're out there on the recordings, the writing grammar, the mechanics, could be improved. There are problems, but I let that pass quite a bit in this assignment because of the content was very good, okay? But you may notice as you hear me read this out loud, and you may see up here that sentence sounds a bit odd, or it's the wrong verb tense, or it's a bit of a mess, and you're not wrong, okay? So this student needs to be proofreading better, okay? But let's just listen to what they have to say, what they're struggling to say sometimes with less than perfect grammar. People's misinformation is diverse, and their opinions from applauding Elon Musk to stating that this is the end of the world and that they are going to start controlling minds. This is not a complete thought, this sentence, but anyways, we can forget this technology has been there for a long time. And it is only because Elon and his chip have made it widely known because of this specific implant that is now safely implanted in a person's skull. It reminds me of one of the viewpoints we discussed in class, which was not only hopeless, but also incredibly extreme. Because this chip will take years to develop in humans, we don't know how it will turn out. We can observe how the studies will continue or whether they will be canceled. We'll examine what the chip is all about and whether it works and helps people, whether all the great claims are false. I'm not discussing this because of how sophisticated technology is now, but rather because if you know something about the illnesses they promise to treat or aid, you'll realize that it will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to cure with an implant. I think that's what the student meant. Start with paraplegic patients or similarly impaired people. This chip and research, if they move in the right direction, can benefit and make life simpler for the patients while also giving them independence. Following this, it mentions blindness, hearing loss, mental disease, and other conditions. Certain circumstances have a connection to the brain, while others do not. The doctors who work with the chip right now, they're specialized in paraplegic or lumbar back illnesses, but this does not imply that they have doctors who specializes in these areas and are certain of this information. I'm going to stop for a second because the writing gets a little bit jumbled and needs a rewrite in terms of clarity. But what is this student trying to tell us? This student has reflected on one thing that we had discussed, and that's great. This student was not the only one who chose the brain chip as their topic for the second assignment. But what is this student trying to really say to us that we need to think about? What do you think? Anybody in the cosmos? Is the student enthusiastic about the technology? What would you say the student's fundamental question is, Zach, that we need to make sure we address? Should we listen to everything Elon Musk says? Yeah. Is it possible that Elon Musk is as much about marketing as he is about engineering? If it's one person who's always the center of something and is always the one making the announcements and is always the one controlling the message, then maybe we should ask, where are all the others who are part of this? The people in whom the chip was implanted? What about the people who created the chip? Why is this one person always the one talking? Maybe he's trying to control the message a little too much, and that should give us concern. Okay, let's take a look at something else. Okay. In today's world, having freedom and democracy is a blessing that is usually left unappreciated. Humanity has had a long history of battles for obtaining basic rights and freedom. Most countries govern themselves on the basis of democracy, and democracy is formed upon the very basis of freedom for every individual. In my reflection, I would like to reflect upon the past and present scenarios and situations that contributed towards and will lead to the development of humanity. Democracy plays a vital role in protecting humanity and encouraging development by providing a free society. The governments around the globe function upon the basic principle of democracy. As Abraham Lincoln said, government of the people, for the people. Democracy gives sovereignty to people and makes sure every human being has the right to select the government. I'm going to stop for a second to just help you to understand something about this assignment. It was really well written. I had a similar assignment that was written so well even better than this, that I wasn't sure the assignment was real. And so I called the student and I said to the student, this is another assignment. I said, this is so well written, but makes so little reference to anything that has taken place in the class. Very little reference. I'm wondering if a machine wrote this and you didn't. But the student assured me that they were so interested in the assignment that they spent some time making sure that they wrote it well. And I acted on good faith and said to the student, excellent, you will receive full marks for this. In this particular example too, I also felt that it was being written by the student. But my struggle when I am marking your reflections right now is something new that I have not had as a professor in many years of teaching, which is I have to be very, very alert when students are writing now, because I have to think that maybe there's a bot or something behind this assignment. And that's why I encourage all of you, when you write your reflections, to please make sure, no matter how well written it is, to refer as much as possible to the content in the class that you're covering. Because going forwards, as well written as the assignment might be, on your third reflections, if I see assignments that are extremely well written and well punctuated by students that I know have had trouble in the past with their writing, I'm going to jump to the conclusion that the student didn't write it, but AI did. So for all of the students, keep doing what you're doing, but just be aware that I'm looking as closely as I can going forwards to make sure that what you write is authentic. That's really important. So far, I haven't had much trouble in this semester. I mentioned earlier that I had about 3 students of 200, but I just want to put my finger in the dam before there becomes a problem. I just want to make sure I stop a problem before it gets any bigger. And that's my concern, is that the closer we get to the end of the semester, when things become more maybe difficult for some of you in terms of workload and being overwhelmed with other work, some of you may make a decision on your final assignment to really reach for the use of AI to help you. Please don't do that. It could really, really hurt you. So far, so good. Okay? All right. One more, and we're going to move on. This one, the student is identified here, and I don't want to do that. So, and here we go. Throughout our course, we covered several thought-provoking themes in classes 4, 5, and 6, all of which had a lasting impact on how I understood the world and society. I have learned more about the intricacies of our contemporary world by looking at Elon Musk's announcement about implanting microchips in people's brains, thinking about the idea of apocalypse from a religious and scientific standpoint, considering the drastic changes humans have made to ecosystems, and investigating themes of sustainability, democracy, and societal freedom. When I read that opening paragraph, I went, wow, this student really is reflecting on classes 4, 5, and 6, because all the examples relate to what was done in the class. This is good. And this is exactly what I'm looking for in work going forwards, is that when you're reflecting and using examples, please use as much the material from the class that we've covered. Then I can see you integrating that into the way you think. For your final assignment, the big one at the end, you will have a chance to really do some research. And I will be expecting to see references to things outside of the class. But for now, please keep sticking to what's covered in the class. The innovative concept of implanting microchips into people's brains by Elon Musk raises serious ethical and intellectual concerns. While technology offers prospects for bettering healthcare and human computing interface, it also brings up issues related to privacy, consent, and the boundaries of technology's application in human society. Musk's vision compels us to thoroughly assess the implications of combining artificial intelligence with human biology, as well as the ethical questions surrounding such undertakings. And the student goes on to reflect on the content that we were covering in the class, asking big questions, and all of this is really good. So the takeaway as I go through some of these reflections with you before we have a little discussion and maybe have a little activity as well is be aware as you move forwards in this semester to keep thinking about what's covered in this class and try to really process that through your reflections. So listen to what the students are saying, listen to what I'm saying, and make sure we hear about that in your reflections. Okay? Really important. So before we move on, is there anything here in the cosmos? Let's see. Yasmin, if you haven't read already, Yasmin, can you jump on your microphone for a second and just read that? Because the text is a little
Oh,
unclear.
yeah.
ahead.
I was
Yeah.
just recommending a book, The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut.
Yes.
It's a book I
Over
read
there for a second.
years and years ago.
Smartboard. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was
Let's get it on the board because I want to explore this for a little bit. Anytime Kurt Vonnegut is mentioned, I always kind of stand at attention because he's quite the brilliant humorist and writer. So,
for
okay.
sure.
First, I'm going to do something here, have a little fun, okay? So I'm going to take this, and the camera's going to go over to Ethan, so you can see Ethan there right now, Yasmin. You
Yes.
should be able to, and Aria is with him. So could you tell Ethan how to write Kurt Vonnegut?
So Kurt.
Yeah, go ahead. Listen to Yasmin. Don't listen to the machine, okay? We listen to humans.
NNEGUT.
Okay. Now I'm going to make it more difficult a little bit for Ethan and Aria. Stay by the smartboard, okay? We're going to get really interactive here for a moment, okay? So Kurt Vonnegut, and it's called, the title of it, The Sirens of
Titan.
Okay. There's also a great Slaughterhouse. Was this one in the Second World War? I forget. Slaughterhouse something.
Yeah, Slaughterhouse 5.
Slaughterhouse 5. Yeah. Cats. No, I'm thinking of another book. Okay. So can you make another slide? Just pull it in the corner when you're done. Just put your finger in the lower right because I'm going to ask Yasmin to summarize as best you can what the Sirens of Titan is about or what you know about it in the same way that Aria summarized her anime. And then we're going to pull out some important themes here, okay?
Mine will definitely not be as good as hers. I read it maybe 6 years ago.
Oh, good. So you read it. Great.
Yeah.
All right, so why don't you just tell us off the top of your head right now, what's it about?
If I remember correctly, it's a guy and his dog. I think it's a dog. And they pretty much travel through space, time, and pretty much try to discover or uncover morality. And I think it goes back to Earth at one point, but he goes to like this distant world and he's trying to see different things and like
Yes.
kind of
Okay.
just uncover like reality in a sense and morality, and like a spiritual adventure, kind of enlightening himself as he goes through his journey, if I'm remembering correctly.
But it's told through the perspective of the guy or the protagonist and his dog. Does the dog have a name? You remember?
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
It could be another one of his books that has the dog, but I'm pretty sure this one had the dog in it.
And it probably was pretty funny, in a very kind of dark, deep way. For
Yeah.
example, how many of you have ever heard of the television show? It's a great television show, but it kind of dates me. The Sopranos. You ever watch The Sopranos? Netflix? Oh, it's about a mafia family and was a classic television show. And it's very dark and very funny at the same time. So, okay. So, in terms of the book's sort of message, if you will, or big theme that is important to the human future,
Free
what do you
will.
think it was, Yasmin, these 6 years later, as you think back on the Sirens of Titan?
I
We're
think some
talking
of
about
it had to do
yeah,
with
go ahead.
love. Like love within himself, and then I think his wife or something like that. But also like free will and the purpose of humanity.
Ooh, okay. And that love and free will and humanity sort of are more important than anything else for the human future? Something like that?
Yeah, something along those lines.
Okay. But that love and humanity are maybe more important than conquering and ruling, that what humans really want is what Kurt Vonnegut is trying to tell us. Okay. Can you just make sure that you put that in the notes area? Let's see. Yeah, you've got it, which is that in terms of our future, the human future, it just might be that the greatest force is very simple: human love. Now, I'm not making all of this up. There's a great poet, 20th century. His name was Ezra Pound. He said about life and about humans, what remains is love. At the end, the rest is dross. Like it's meaningless. What remains is love. The rest is dross. And I think we need to keep that in mind as we go into space over these next weeks. As we think about what humans are supposed to be doing there and what we will achieve, what will be the role of love? We're talking about tech, we're talking about engineering, we're talking about exploration, we're talking about all these big forces, but what about this very simple thing that Yasmin has helped us to see today and we've explored a little bit more? I don't think it's something we really ever talk much about when it comes to space exploration. Is where's the love? And I know that might sound kind of strange to ask, but does it sound so strange, Yasmin?
With love, no, I think love is probably the most powerful thing we can experience, and it drives people.
So how will it drive us in space? What do you think? What role will it take as we move off the planet? What do you think,
Well,
Yasmin?
I think for those like the elite or those higher up, I don't know if they have the capacity to be able to love other people, but they may have such a love for their family and the generations to follow that they want to give them like a safety. And that's why they want to continue to explore and expand their horizons pretty much and get them out of Earth before Earth collapses and kind of resets itself. So maybe love is driving them, or their passion and their love for discovering new things and stuff like that may be driving them.
Ethan, please go ahead. Ethan's got something to say. I'm going to bring the camera over. Go ahead.
Yasmin makes a really great point with like the love aspect of with people and space. And I was thinking of if we were to put an exploration like mission for some certain type of humans, we would need would I would prefer a human that would love other humans around
Yes,
them,
yes.
work as a team,
Yes.
and go out and explore space, and that kind of love culture could influence a lot of people in the world because it only takes one person with a lot of love and drive and a message that they hold really dearly to
Yes.
just spread it through their own actions, and lots of humans could follow behind them.
That's right.
So if like we were to go on the moon or go on like another colony and like make like a Mars colony,
Yes.
maybe bring a lot of humans that have a lot of love inside of them to
Yeah,
Make-
sure, sure. They'll get along. It's
yeah.
going to be stressful, and the more that you care about others, the more probably you're going to be patient in putting up with the difficulties.
Love is gonna be
that you will
needed if
have.
we're gonna
Right?
survive.
Yeah. I really always want to commend Yasmin in her insights in this class, and she also wrote a good second reflection, but I didn't use it as an example here. But all of you who come to the online class or come in person, I always see as people who really want to contribute and care. And I don't give out a participation mark in this class. I don't want students to feel that there's pressure to come or not. That's not what this class is about. But I do want to commend those who come like this. And Yasmin shows up, every class. I met her once. She came in here and introduced herself, but no problem. We never see her. Doesn't matter. We get her brain and we get her heart. And this is very important. Okay, so let's make sure that we've got that down. Great, we've got areas, good notes. And when you're done finishing your thought, there, come back, guys, because we're going to conclude. We're going to end soon. I would like to actually get going a little earlier today. I have some things to deal with, and also probably that will be good news to all of you too. So anything you'd like to say before we start bringing the class to a little bit of a conclusion and then get ready for next week? It's Kiara, isn't it? Yeah.
In general, like I understand like what we're doing. We're talking about like love and space, right? Like the love to
Exactly.
attract-
And we're talking about the idea of as we go forwards this second half of the semester, Kiara, we're going to be exploring more about what humans are doing off the planet. And I'm going to give a lecture next week about it's more of an informative lecture. What is the solar system? It'll feel like I'm taking you back to grade 4 or grade 3 and explaining what the planets are, and the galaxy and the universe, and so that you understand the bigger picture of what we are going into with some good facts about all of that. But we're entering this second half of the semester increasingly into space exploration off the planet. And today we're asking the question a little bit, what is the purpose for humans to be even in space? And what will we be taking there with us? Our own problems or something new? And we've determined that love is a very critical part of what we want to take because that's so important to humans.
Well, in my personal opinion, when it comes to like space exploration and trying to like go into space, although I feel like the problems that we're having on Earth shouldn't be
Yes.
taken to space, it will be taken to space. Like there will be, to a certain degree, we could try to prevent those things from happening, but to prevent them from happening, we'll have to eliminate certain humans from coming with us. Because some of the problems aren't even from Earth itself; it's just from us humans and our thoughts and beliefs. So to eliminate most of our problems, we're gonna have to leave or eliminate most of those humans. And as you know, that's not the morally right thing to
Definitely
do.
not.
So it's either that we're going to bring back it's either that we're going to bring either some of our problems to space and leave all the humans alive, or just like bring none, or just don't go to space at all and have all our problems stay on Earth.
And maybe use that money, which is billions and billions of dollars, in building spacecraft and undertaking these missions, and use those to deal with some of the more urgent social and environmental problems that we face on Earth. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't think it's too late. Like we could look at the space exploration and look towards like where we could possibly live, but I don't think it's too late to save the Earth. Like the Earth is still pretty good. I think we still have some time left.
Mm.
It's just that the higher ups aren't really doing anything about it.
Well, we're going to do something about it in this class. We're going to keep talking and having good discussions. And I'm going to bring you a good lecture next week that actually may inspire you, strangely, to want to go into space. Even though we're talking now about maybe not going, but I do want to give you something really important to think about before next week as we really start to get into this idea of new worlds and our quest to settle in space, and also our accelerating quest to look for new forms of intelligent life, which some scientists believe we're getting closer to now. It has been said that you are, and your children, and your grandchildren, and the ones all coming after you, your descendants, are living at a time in history where the challenges that we face together have never been more complex, they've never been more urgent, and they've never been more difficult to resolve on planet Earth. That there are complex social and environmental problems here that are seemingly unsolvable. And we see these kinds of conflicts play out, for example, in the war in the Middle East right now, or the war in Ukraine, or continuing problems we see with inequality in the world and all of these big problems. Astronauts will tell you, though, knowing all of this, knowing that there are problems here that are so difficult and urgent, that it makes us going to space even more important, that we have an even greater need to go, because humans, when they discover, they continually demonstrate the human capacity to open up new worlds and new places. And this will always be a source of inspiration for humanity. And the example that is often given, and I'll conclude on this today, is that in the 1960s, when we go back now about 60 years to the great space race of the 20th century, when the Soviet Union and the United States were racing to be the first person to put a human on the moon. And the United States got there first, with Neil Armstrong stepping down onto the moon and 2 other astronauts in 1969. 6 months before that is when we humans got the first picture of the planet. And it has been said that that picture of Earth from space is changing the world in ways that we don't fully even realize today. And we didn't have to go to space in the 1960s. We could have said the same thing then. There were huge racial problems in the United States at that time. It was the time of the civil rights movement. It was the time of Martin Luther King Jr., who would eventually be assassinated. John Kennedy, as you know, the American president, he'd been assassinated about 6 years earlier. And his brother, Robert Kennedy, was assassinated around the same time that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. So these were times that were very confrontational and violent. Protests in the streets against the Vietnam War then, with the United States in Vietnam. So it was a volatile, violent, difficult time like we are facing to some extent now. And yet we went to space. And what it produced was, yes, going to the moon, but it is now said more and more as we move into the third millennium. We are into the third millennium now, the 2000s. That's that's 3,000-year periods. There were the zeros to the ones to the twos. Sorry, we're in the third now. 0 to 1, 1 to 2 was the 2 millennia. Now we're in the third millennium, the 2000s. And we're just in the early part. It's been said that that photograph that we got of the planet whole from space in 1968, just before we landed on the moon, that we didn't really need, has been transformative for humanity in opening us up to the idea that, yes, there is this one planet. It is finite. There's a biosphere, and in it, everything is alive. And then there's that crest around it. And then outside of that, everything is not alive. And that crest, that halo, that ribbon is so thin. And we understand now that everything that is alive is actually vulnerable, more vulnerable than we think. And that has led to, in some ways, a greater environmental consciousness, a greater sense of what unites us rather than divides us on the planet. You could say it was not needed. We didn't need that photograph. We needed to solve bigger problems. I would ask you, maybe not. Maybe we did need that photograph. And maybe we didn't need that opening us up to a broader horizon that maybe could benefit all of us. So we're going to explore this more going forwards in this second half of the semester. The idea of, do we really need to be there? Do we not really need to be there? What are we going to do there? All of this, but it's interesting. And you might find me being more optimistic rather than pessimistic about our need to go there. Okay? So anybody want to say anything before we conclude? Let you go and enjoy this weird planet where it's 17 degrees today and March the 5th, and it's going to stay in double digits for the rest of the week. And we are already in late May, but it's not late May, it's March. And it's all because of the humans. Okay, the cosmos. What's happening there? Thank you, Yasmin. Yeah, frightening how warm it is. But Yasmin, you're smart. You're going to change it, right? You're going to go out there and you're going to be one of these great humans that's going to make and fix the problems we have here so we can go into space. Okay, so next week, anime, we're going to get something. I'm going to check those and see what we can pull from Cyberpunk 2077. Okay, and have a good week, everybody. And I'll see you next week. Okay, thank you.